will not disappoint us this time, so that the issues that led to this stage of engagement will not be repeated. It is not to the interest of anybody that the students are out of school. It's not in the interest of anybody in this situation that the schools are not on. So we want to believe that government will, wake up and do the things they're supposed to do, and it will not be necessary again to consider this option of engagement.
In part of your statements during that conference, you have said that the polytechnics are faced with feeble and moribund infrastructure with no serious effort on government to improve research, and that the budgetary allocations for polytechnics is rather abysmal. And then you look at what's going on with the 2013 budget between the federal government
said that,
and
that is part of the demand that we are making. If you look at the list of demands that we have, we said there is need for a needs assessment of Nigerian polytechnics. This has been done in the universities. And when this thing has been done, it's given the government, a clear picture of how things are really in the university sector. And I will tell you that what government discovered in the university surprised them. And we are saying, if what you discovered in the university shocks you, come to the polytechnics and and you will be transmogrified. We are saying, let there be a needs assessment. You cannot say that this is how a system is, except you come in and look at all the areas of the system, so that we can get away from, pursuing things, half-heartedly. Let's come to the polytechnic, do a needs assessment, and we'll be able to know exactly what is needed there. And then we'll know exactly the way that we're going to fund polytechnics.
Okay, so not that you're asking for an immediate improvement on the budgetary allocation. Do you want this assessment to be done first? Is that it? Did you get the question? I was saying, is it that your demand is that government conducts this needs assessment on the polytechnics first, and not that you want an immediate improvement on budgetary allocations for polytechnics?
No, that is not really the demand, because there are things that are obvious as you are looking at them. It is obvious there is no amount of money, actually, because there is a profile. There is a budgetary profile for polytechnics, really. What polytechnics need, there are global standards, and these standards have not been met. So there is no amount of money that government will commit to the polytechnic sector now that will be said to be surplus. No, but we're saying, actually, for government to commit money to where money is really needed, there has to be a needs assessment, so that government can prioritize, know the areas of need, immediate need, and do their plans, short term, mid term, long term. If we are really serious about polytechnic education, that's just the point we are making. It's about the system, honestly.
Do people in polytechnics, I was just going to ask you, does your union feel marginalized? Do you think there is too much concentration on universities?
Well, thank you very much for that. We don't want to, reduce this to a university polytechnic thing. But actually, we are saying that as much as government needs to pay attention to universities, which is the global understanding, we are also asking that government will also pay attention to other subsectors in the tertiary, because there are niches that we need to fill. Okay, look, let's take a common example now that is on board now in Nigeria. When government talks about access to higher education, what has been government's response is to increase the number of universities, not increasing capacity in these universities. Government has now gone ahead to, start 12 new universities in states where they did not have federal universities before. And government is thinking about, starting mega universities, one in each of the geopolitical zones. Now, that is just government's response. That is what government thinks about increasing access to, higher education. But not a single polytechnic has been established in anywhere at all. Not a single polytechnic has been thought of as becoming a mega polytechnic. Okay, look at the government's policy now. Every year, government takes about 120 first-class graduates of universities and sends them to the best universities abroad for further studies. And there are people in polytechnics also who make distinctions, very good students, in the technical area. Nobody is talking about them. So when we talk about marginalization, it becomes clear that actually even in TED Fund, TED Fund, I must say, is the major interventionist agency and has been upholding education in terms of funding in Nigeria recently. But look at the funding in TED Fund. It started as, 211, 2 for universities, 1 for polytechnics, 1 for colleges of education. But in the recent allocations, you find that it's almost going to 611. So in terms of marginalization, there is no question about that. We are not saying that the funding of universities is enough. We don't think it's enough even. But we are saying, as much as you are paying attention to some other sectors, also pay attention to the polytechnic sector, because it must be the basis for us to drive our industries and the economy.
Do you think our strikes have achieved anything? Because time and again, in both universities, polytechnics, even colleges of education, every now and then you see them embark on strike, and time and again, and at the end of the day, most of these demands, they say, are never met. Do you think that strike addresses some of these challenges which you're faced with now?
Let me say this very clearly. ASUP does not have a penchant for strikes. As I have said earlier, for more than a year and a half, even before we came on board in this administration, some of these issues had been on the table, and we have been very patient. We have engaged government through dialogue. We have even suggested other means, of resolving this issue so that we don't come to this point. Strikes, as we see, strikes are really not productive for the system, but it is an expression. It is an ultimate expression of frustration on the part of the union as we engage with government. And I want to make that point clear. But I want to say that strikes are not unfruitful, because even right now, government has been able to respond in some of the issues. For more than 1.5 years, the governing councils of polytechnics were dissolved. They were not reconstituted until ASUP went on this action, and government had to reconstitute them so that the polytechnics can run properly. And again, we've now had this attention from even the Senate, even from the Ministry of Labor, and the Senate chairman on education had actually promised that he's going to pursue this issue of discrimination and marginalization of polytechnic graduates in the public service. And I think that we have been able to call government's attention to some of these issues. And I believe that from now on, government will be able to, with the promise of the Minister of Labor, to actually look at these matters more seriously.
But how fruitful are your strikes? When you say they've been fruitful somewhat, how fruitful are they in the area of the students as concerning their education?
Yes, as concerning the education, the students should be more concerned about what happens after they graduate than now they want to graduate on a short term and they say, we have graduated on time. If the strike had actually affected the time of their graduation, it is better we take care of their future. That is what we are saying. Because somebody spends 5 years for an average polytechnic course and gets out into society, he is competent, he is good at his job, and all he is being judged with all through his entire career is where he went to school, not what he can do on the job. We think that if this is what we were able to change, if we're able to change and create a mindset for a system that will be acceptable in society, as a system that has competence and skills, and that will have requisite recognition, I think that we have done much for the students.
Do you agree with some of the people who hold the view that, well, polytechnics seem to have lost the focus in terms of what they were originally set out for, rather than comparing themselves with universities? Because if they focused on that, nobody would discriminate or even look down on what the students can do.